Hello, students, and welcome to our lab activity today dealing with biome classification. And with this lab activity today, you're going to be utilizing a number of things. First, I'm going to have a map available for you in the room with these different locations on it. And if you're not in the room, that's okay. We can still do the activity because you're going to be trying to determine the biome type, the type of biome of the following locations in your room, or rather in the world. And they include 4 different locations. In your lab, they're labeled as A, B, C, and D. And you'll see that the 4 locations correspond to Singapore, Aswan, Peoria, and Barrow. And you're going to try and determine the correct location of those 4 places on planet Earth using your lab activity. And the problem, if you read along, it says, what are the most important factors in the classification of biomes? You should have a pretty good idea as to what those factors are, so be sure to include those in your hypothesis. But let me explain to you a few things before you get started here. You will notice that in your book, you have several things that you're going to have to refer to. You have a data chart here with various information, including the 4 locations. And with the 4 locations, you'll see that there is information regarding the temperature in degrees Celsius, as well as the precipitation in centimeters. So look at that first for your 4 locations under this column. For the 4 locations A, B, C, and D, you have temperature and you have precipitation for each one. And you have that information covering a span of an entire year over 12 months. So that's this first table of information up top. Down below, there's another table of information that you are going to be completing. And this is the end result, you might say, of your goal is to determine what type of biome is each of these 4 locations and what is the actual location. And again, they are listed in the top of your procedures in bold italicized words. So it's really multiple choice. But if you look over to the right here, here is a graph that you're going to be using in order to find your answers. So I want to try and take you through the steps here of how you're going to use this information to find the answers, which are the biome types of these 4 locations. So let me explain a few things. First of all, the last column in this table you have to complete first. Because at the end of each row, you need to fill in some information. And that information includes the average temperature. So for location A, you're given the temperature for 12 months of the year, and you have to write down what is the average temperature at the end of that row. How do you determine the average temperature? Well, you can use your calculators today because you're going to be adding the temperatures, the 12 temperatures up, and in order to determine the average, once you've added those 12 temperatures, you're going to hit the equal sign and then divide it by 12. That will give you the average temperature at the end of the row for each of the 4 locations. Now, even though you're using a calculator, use some mental math because your average should be no lower than the lowest number and no higher than the highest number. If it is, you added the numbers or did the math wrong. So make sure you add all 12 numbers together, hit equals, and divide it by 12. So that's for the temperature of each location. Now you'll also have to include the total precipitation. For the total precipitation, all you have to do is add up all of the precipitation numbers for the 12 months and hit equals, and that's your answer at the end of the last column there, at the end of the row. So you're going to be calculating two things. The average temperature is adding all of the temperatures and dividing by 12, and the total precipitation, you're just adding those numbers together. That's going to give you two numbers for each location. And using those two numbers, you're going to be referring to that graph on the bottom of the page. And you'll see that it has on the x-axis your precipitation, and on the y-axis is the average temperature. So based on the numbers that you get for each location, you're going to take those numbers down to this graph, and it's going to be a coordinate that you're going to find the location of, just like battleship. We've talked about this before. So for location A, you find your total precipitation along the x-axis. And for the average temperature, you find it along the y-axis. Where those two numbers intersect one another, and you have to approximate a little bit with this particular graph. But where those two numbers intersect one another, it will give you a location on this graph that corresponds to one of the biomes on Earth. So let me just give you an example. If your precipitation comes up to be 0, well, you know you're going to be all the way over on the left-hand side of the x-axis. And no matter what the temperature is over here, you're going to be somewhere along this line, which if you look at this category, this biome, it's a desert. So if it doesn't rain at all, you know you're in a desert. But you have to use the information that you calculate from the graph above to determine which biome corresponds to each of these locations. Once you've identified that, you're going to take that information from that graph and you're going to put it into your data table for your observations. So you're going to record that, the biome type, next to each location in this data table down below. Once you've done that, you're going to check the map. And when you check the map, which I'll have displayed, and again, if you don't have the map available, if you're doing this at home, then you can use the procedures above, because after each location, I've given you the biome. So either way, you will be able to complete this data table and be able to correspond the location with the appropriate biome. So we'll see how you do. Just a quick tip to remember here, and I've written it again on the top of the page. The average temperature, you have to add all of your temperatures together, hit equal, divided by 12, because that's how many months there are in a year, and write that down for average temperature. But the total precipitation, you're just adding all of the precipitation together, hit equals, and that's your total precipitation. Again, that gives you two numbers for each location. Use those two numbers on the x and the y axis on your graph to determine what that temperature and precipitation indicates in terms of a biome, and then use that information to help identify what those four cities, what biome those four cities are located in. And that's basically all you have to do. By the way, I may give you some bonus points if you identify the four locations correctly, matching them up with the correct biome. So let's see how you do, and I wish you well. Go to it. and I'll see you later. But for now, I'll say bye-bye.